If you're an observer, please identify yourself as an observer. If you're an attendee, I'd like to know that, so please identify yourself that way. Thank you. If you're an observer, please identify yourself as an observer. If you're an attendee, I'd like to know that, so please identify yourself that way. Thank you.
That's going to be disruptive.
If you're an observer, please identify yourself as an observer. If you're an attendee, I'd like.
We're going to mute Safari. So hopefully that'll prevent the.
I have no idea what you just did.
You see that microphone button?
Mm-hmm.
We hit that to mute Safari.
No. Observer, observer, observer. Okay.
Okay. This person is an observer. Move them to attendee.
Observers aren't attendees, though.
They're just not panelists.
Okay. Ms. Ramirez, are you an attendee or an observer? Ms. Ramirez, can you hear me? I'll just let it go. Okay.
Kiara, change your tile. You're a Maine West lawyer.
Kiara is not able to speak right now. She is an attendee though.
Okay. What's the name of the case, though?
I'm sorry. I thought Kiara was defense attorney for Maine West, not an observer.
Kiara's a panelist.
So sorry.
That's okay. I'll go back to the title of the case. If there's anyone else who should be an attendee and a panelist, please let me know now, because I think we're going to be ready to start. We're a little bit late already. Anybody else who needs to be a panelist here?
I'm sorry, folks, but Maine West, I thought Kiara was a lawyer.
She must be she's a panelist, I believe.
She's on my team. She's on our team.
I understand that.
Captains, she's a defense lawyer for Maine West.
I do not show her as an observer any longer. Kiara, are you there?
This side, and she's not available to talk right now. She can't, I think. So.
What is her job is the point?
I don't have a defense role, Mr. Rosenberg.
I'm so sorry.
That should be her.
Okay.
She's a student attendee. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. That's the name of the case. I've forgotten it already.
It's not listed on the,
It is. Go back to that sheet. I believe we're ready to start. This is State versus Markson, if I'm not mistaken. My name is Judge Cooper. I'm going to be the presiding judge. There are a number of lawyers here who are going to be present. They're going to be grading on performance. They're going to be offering you some feedback when we're done. And I want to make sure, are we all ready to go? Is everybody ready to proceed? Okay. All right, then prosecution. Who's going?
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
We are the
Please state your name.
My name is Mustafa Afzal, and I'm lead counsel for the prosecution.
Okay, thank you. Do you have an opening?
Your Honor, before we begin, we have a few housekeeping matters to attend to.
Absolutely.
May we make brief introductions, Your Honor?
You may.
Good evening, Your Honor. We are the prosecution representing the people in today's case. My name is Asir Afzal, and I'm the lead counsel for the prosecution. This is my co-counsel, MJ Deniega, and my co-counsel, Sabrina Noor. May we introduce our witnesses?
You may.
This is Ina Kim, who will be portraying Avery Peters. And this is Noah Yukana, who will be portraying Dr. Alex McDonald. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Since we haven't had the pleasure of appearing in our courtroom with you before, I ask permission from myself, co-counsel, opposing counsel, and the witnesses to reference exhibits and affidavits that have been previously provided.
Yes, you may do so.
Additionally, Your Honor, I'd like to inform the court that according to Section 10, page 33 of the ISBA handbook, each examination and speech is permitted an extra 10 seconds of courtesy time.
That's the rule.
Before we proceed, I would like to point out stipulations 14 and 15.
Okay,
Permission to read them aloud to the court.
okay,
Pursuant to stipulation 14, the admissibility of Exhibit 3 cannot be contested because it is a business record according to Rule 803-6. However, the use of its contents can be challenged. Stipulation 15 states, the state does not have to prove the amount of controlled substance that the decedent ingested, only that any amount of that controlled substance caused the death of the decedent. At this time, Your Honor, the prosecution is ready to proceed with opening statements.
okay, proceed.
Excuse me, Your Honor. Before we
Yeah.
begin, may I introduce the defense team?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You need to
My
speak up a
name
little
is-
bit. Ms. Peplowski, can you speak up?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Samantha Poplowski. I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Taylor Smith in today's case. May I have my co-counsel introduce themselves as well?
Yeah, you may. Who's your co-counsel?
Your Honor, my name is Sephora Salman, and I will be lead counsel for the defense, which is representing Jordan Markson in today's trial. I would like to introduce my co-counsel, Samantha Servin.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I will be conducting the direct examination of Jordan Markson as well as performing the closing argument.
Okay,
May we introduce our witnesses?
you may.
We have Alexander Vankov portraying Dr. Taylor Smith, and we have Emma Von Bulow as Jordan Markson.
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
good evening, Your Honor.
Hello. Welcome. Okay, are we ready for opening statements now? Mr. Afzal, is that going to be you?
No, Your Honor, that will be MJ Deniega.
Okay. Mr.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Follow the defendant's words. I never should have given Riley those pills. On June 5th, 2020, Riley Russell and the defendant Jordan Markson hung out at the defendant's grandmother's house. When Riley arrived, though, he didn't know that the defendant was in possession of the prescription drug oxycodone. In fact, Riley didn't know where these pills were at all. The defendant made sure he did. And those pills, the ones the defendant delivered to him, they killed Riley Russell. And that's why the defendant's being charged with possession of a controlled substance and drug-induced homicide. Now, members of the jury, we carry the burden of proof, and we must prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant was in possession of the prescription drug oxycodone and that he committed homicide. The defendant had constructive possession of the drugs as he knew where they were and could access them. As for delivery, the defendant didn't necessarily have to physically deliver the drugs, but simply mentioning the location qualifies as constructive delivery. And it's through this constructive delivery that the defendant committed homicide on June 5th, 2020. We're going to meet our burden today because the evidence and the defendant's words will show you three things. The defendant possessed the drug, the defendant delivered the drug, and that those drugs caused the death of Riley Russell. Now to begin, the defendant had knowledge and control over his grandmother's oxycodone prescription on the night of June 5th, 2020. Our first witness, Avery Peters, a Lincoln County EMT paramedic who's dispatched to the incident, will testify to how she found Riley without a pulse, but with the oxycodone pills lying next to him. The paramedics couldn't save Riley, and he died after ingesting the oxycodone. However, Peters then heard the defendant mention his grandmother's stash of pills. After following the defendant's words, Peters then found additional drugs behind the cabinet above the microwave, a location the defendant mentioned, and a location the defendant knew. Now, not only did the defendant possess these drugs, but he delivered them as well. That night, as Riley was taking his last breaths, the defendant stated in his own words, "I never should have given Riley those pills." Later that night, Riley tragically died. Riley's body was then sent to our second witness, Dr. Alex McDonald, the chief medical examiner of the village of Clearwater, Illinois. Dr. McDonald will testify to how his autopsy showed that Russell had ingested oxycodone. Dr. McDonald was able to conclude that Russell had died as a result of the oxycodone, and had he not ingested it that night, he would have lived. Dr. McDonald also noted the words of the defendant, "Riley only knew they were there because of me," showing that the defendant told Riley where these pills were. At the conclusion of today's trial, after you've heard all of the evidence, my co-counsel, Oscar Afzal, will come before you and ask that you find the defendant guilty for drug-induced homicide and for possession of a controlled substance because members of the jury, when you follow the defendant's words, you'll hear his confession of possession and delivery of oxycodone, which caused the death of Riley Russell. Follow the defendant's words. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense, do you have a statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Once again, my name is Roshni Shah, and I'll be presenting the opening statement. May I proceed?
You may.
On the night of June 5th, Riley Russell was on a mission to score drugs and to use my client, Jordan Markison, to complete that mission. My client had no control over the actions of Riley Russell that ultimately led to his death. It was Riley's own decision that caused her death to decline. Jordan did not make Riley drink excessively and chain smoke cigarettes that fateful night. And he did not make Riley neglect his chronic and ultimately fatal medical condition, which are the events that caused Riley's death. Riley Russell suffered from a condition called cystic fibrosis, which affects the lungs, making it more difficult to breathe. Riley had been afflicted with this disease over 10 years ago. As classmates at Clearwater High School, Jordan would notice Riley indulging in excessive smoking and drinking. Riley made his own decision and skipped his prescribed therapy sessions and breathing exercises. On June 5th, Riley invited himself over to Jordan's grandmother's house. They spent the evening drinking, gaming, and eating. Out of the blue, Riley asked Jordan if he had anything fun for him to try. Confused, Jordan asked him to explain what he meant by that. Riley clarified that he was looking for pills. Jordan offhandedly remembered that her grandmother took pills. The evidence will show that Jordan did not tell Riley what the pills were or where they were located. In fact, while Jordan was asleep, Riley embarked upon his quest to find Mrs. Markinson's supply of oxycodone, a prescription drug. Shortly after, Jordan woke up to the sound of Riley choking and gurgling. The bottle of oxycodone was right next to Riley, as well as cigarette butts. Riley had already stopped breathing by the time the paramedics could even arrive. We will call up expert witness Dr. Taylor Smith, an expert on cystic fibrosis. He will testify to the effects of cystic fibrosis and Riley's condition in his final hours. Dr. Smith will conclude that it was Riley's already declining health in combination with his risky behavior that caused Riley Russell's ultimate death. He will also conclude that the trace amount of oxycodone found in Riley Russell's system was not the ultimate cause of his premature death. Then we will call up Jordan Markison, who will testify that she did not know where the pills were located. She will also tell you that she did not have any control over the substance that Riley Russell may have ingested in his body, and therefore could not possibly have delivered a prescription drug, as the state must prove. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in order to find Jordan Markison guilty of her charge of drug-induced homicide, the prosecution must prove the elements of the crime beyond any reasonable doubt. 1, that Jordan Markison was the one who delivered a controlled substance to Riley. 2, that Riley at any point ingested the drug. And 3, that Riley Russell's death was caused by the ingestion. We are confident today that the prosecution will not be able to meet this burden of proof. Jordan Markison did not cause the death of Riley Russell. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Riley was obsessed with completing his mission, and nothing would get in his way. Jordan Markison had no control of what Riley Russell ingested in his body. At the end of the day, it was Riley's decision over which Jordan had no control over. At the conclusion of this trial, we ask that you will find, in the interest of justice, the defendant, Jordan Markison, not guilty of both possession of controlled substance and drug-induced homicide. Thank you.
Thank you. State, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Avery Peters to the stand.
Please raise your hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
I do, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Please state your name for the record of the court.
Hello, everybody. My name is Avery Peters, but everyone knows me as Paramedic Peters.
Could you please tell us more about your job as a paramedic?
Sure. I've been licensed as a volunteer part-time paramedic for 6 years now. I wish there were a full-time position available in my county because this career is my passion. But I'm so happy that I can help people as a paramedic. So I decided to be on call for emergencies as much as I can.
And what type of emergencies do you usually respond to?
I respond to many different emergencies, such as car accidents, fires, and unfortunately, far too many cases related to the COVID-19 pandemic. It breaks my heart to see so many patients in pain, but being a paramedic can be very fulfilling because I can help save lives.
And why are you testifying in court today?
I'm here to talk about what happened on June 6th. I was dispatched to an emergency call at 340 Maple Road at around 1 a.m.
What did you do when you were dispatched to an emergency call at 340 Maple Road?
Well, I rushed into the station and grabbed some coffee on the way in so I could stay alert. I then raced to the location of the emergency.
Now let's talk about what happened once you arrived at the location of the emergency. What happened once you arrived at the location of the emergency?
I went down to the basement, which was where the victim was found lying unconscious. As we headed down, though, I heard Markison, the defendant, say, "I never should have given Riley those pills," and then informed me that there's a prescription pill bottle at the home.
Would you recognize a copy of this prescription pill bottle and its label, which was previously provided to you?
Oh, yes, I would.
Ms. Peters, could you please pull that out for us?
Sure. I have them out right here.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is referencing Exhibits 7 and 9.
So noted.
Ms. Peters, could you please tell us what Exhibits 7 and 9 are?
Sure. Exhibit 7 is a picture of the prescription pill bottle found at the home, and Exhibit 9 is the label found on the pill bottle.
Are these a fair and accurate representation of that prescription pill bottle and label?
Yes, they are.
Are there any alterations to these pictures?
No, I don't see any.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to enter Exhibits 7 and 9 into evidence.
Hearing no objection, admitted.
Directing your attention to Exhibit 7, where was the prescription pill bottle found?
Well, this prescription pill bottle was found right next to the victim. And when Markson told me about these pills, she kept repeating the words, "I never meant for this to happen." So because of this, I examined the pill bottle more closely.
And what did you learn when you examined the prescription pill bottle more closely?
Well, from Exhibit 9, the label, I learned that this is the opiate oxycodone, which was prescribed to a Christine Markson. And because of Markson's words and since the pill bottle was right next to the victim, I suspected a potential oxycodone overdose to be the cause of death.
Do you have any experience with drug overdoses?
Well, yes, I do. Unfortunately, I've seen far too many drug overdoses in my years as a paramedic. That's why all paramedics are trained to look for signs of an overdose and train on how to treat it. And I believe that Russell appeared to be another victim of a drug overdose, specifically oxycodone.
What did you do when you suspected Riley was a victim of an oxycodone overdose?
I immediately began to examine and treat him. And when I checked his vital signs, I learned that he was unconscious and not breathing.
What did you do when you learned Riley Russell was unconscious and not breathing?
Well, given the possibility of this emergency being a drug overdose case, I administered a Narcan shot, which is standard procedure in potential overdose cases. Unfortunately, the victim showed no visible response.
And what did you do when Riley showed no visible response to the Narcan shot?
I inspected the victim's airway and found no obstruction, so I attempted intubation. This is a quick procedure I'm trained to use to help the victim breathe. I'm sad to say that this didn't work either.
What else did you do to try and save Riley Russell's life?
I also tried CPR, but unfortunately that didn't work. It's such a shame for someone so young to die so tragically. After I reported his unfortunate death to police, I heard Markson say something about their grandma's stash in the cabinet above the microwave.
And what did you do after you heard the defendant talk about his grandmother's stash in the cabinet above the microwave?
Well, I followed the defendant's words and looked into the cabinet above the microwave. There, I found another prescription pill bottle, exactly where Markson said they would be.
Why did you follow the defendant's words to look into the stash?
Well, I did so because Markson said there were oxycodone pills right next to the victim. And she said, I never should have given Riley those pills.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Ms. Peters. I have no further questions.
Cross,
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
please.
Good afternoon, Ms. Peters.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Peters, you're testifying here today as an emergency medical technician, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you were on call during the weekend of June 5th and June 6th, 2020?
Yes, that's correct.
On the day of June 5th, you had worked a day as a full-time bank teller at Clearwater Bank. Is that right?
Well, yes, that's correct.
And when you returned home, you were so tired that you had to grab a cup of coffee after you were paged. Isn't that right?
Well, yes, that's right. Unfortunately, COVID struck us pretty hard.
In fact, you were asleep when the page first came in. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And even you admit that it took you a little longer than usual to get into the station, right?
Yeah, I would say that, like less than a minute, nothing too drastic though.
So a little longer in your own words, yeah?
Yes, a little bit.
Now, once you got onto the scene, you noticed that Riley Russell's lips were bluish black, isn't that right?
Oh, yes, I did.
And this indicated to you that he hadn't been breathing for a while?
Yes, I believe so.
And you immediately suspected a possible overdose, correct?
Yes, that's right. After all the evidence I gathered on scene, I would be happy to explain these if you like.
Sorry. However, you're not an expert on narcotics, are you?
No, I'm not.
So this was just a potential overdose then, is that right?
Yes, after what I analyzed at the scene.
Indeed. Now, you were called for Riley Russell's case about 1 o'clock, isn't that right?
Yes, that's true.
And you were only able to pronounce Riley Russell dead about 2 hours after the initial page, isn't that right?
Yes, I did. I tried everything in my power to save Russell, but unfortunately that didn't work.
And you also noticed a bottle of pills lying next to Riley, didn't you?
I did.
And in fact, that was a major reason that you suspected a potential overdose?
Yes, that's right.
And you even noted that the prescription was written for 60 pills, is that right?
That's correct.
However, can you tell us, is it possible for you to tell us if any pills were missing?
Well, I couldn't be exactly certain since I couldn't count all the pills in the bottle at that time.
So that's a no to my question then?
Yes, that's a no.
Very well. Now, afterwards, you claim that you heard my client talk about a quote-unquote stash. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. May I be heard?
What's the objection?
Hearsay. Oh, may I be heard?
You may.
These are out-of-court statements being used for the truth of the matter asserted.
Your Honor, if I may?
Yes.
I'm simply asking what Ms. Peters heard. She's already testified to this during her direct examination, and since it is a statement potentially made by my client, it would then be an exception to the hearsay rule.
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Ms. Peters, now let me repeat my question. Now, you say that you heard my client talk about a quote-unquote stash. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
However, you were the only one to follow his supposed directions?
Well, yes, that's right.
Now, Ms. Peters, you don't have any experience in crime scene analysis, do you?
No, I don't. I'm an EMT paramedic.
And you wouldn't have any experience in forensics then either, would you?
No, I do not.
In fact, your only job that night was to do your best efforts to resuscitate Riley Russell. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's my job.
A job in which you were unfortunately unsuccessful?
Well, yes, I'm not guaranteed to save every single life. I wish I did, though.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Is there any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. May this witness be excused.
She may. Thank you. Do you have a second witness state?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Dr. Alex McDonald. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Please state your name for the record of the court.
My name is Dr. Alex McDonald, the Chief Medical Examiner for Lincoln County.
What does a chief medical examiner do?
One moment, Mr. Afzal, I need to swear the witness in.
Oh, sorry, Your Honor.
That's okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record of the court.
My name is Dr. Alex McDonald, Chief Medical Examiner for Lincoln County.
What does a chief medical examiner do?
Well, as Chief Medical Examiner, my job is to not only determine the cause of death, but also determine the manner of one's death. You know, whether it was a suicide, homicide, accidental, natural causes, or anything else. I basically look at all the evidence and see how they fit together, almost like creating a puzzle.
How are you involved in today's case?
Well, I was asked by the state of Illinois to review the case material in today's case and provide my expert opinion regarding the death of Riley Russell. I came to 3 conclusions in today's case. 1, regarding the factors that caused Riley's death. second regarding the factors that did not cause Riley's death, and a third regarding the manner of Riley's death.
Could you please describe your education?
Of course. I graduated from Southern Illinois University with my master's in epidemiology. I then received my board certification in forensic and anatomic pathology. I also wrote my master's thesis on the containment of the abuse of narcotic prescription painkillers.
Could you please describe your experience?
Yes, I've been the chief medical examiner for Lincoln County for over 13 years. During this time, I have examined countless dead bodies to determine the cause of death.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to establish Dr. McDonald as an expert in the field of forensic pathology with a specialization in epidemiology.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Let's talk about your first conclusion regarding potential causes of death. What factors did you consider to be potential causes of death?
I considered both alcohol poisoning and cystic fibrosis as potential causes of death.
Were you able to rule out alcohol poisoning?
Yes. Riley's blood alcohol concentration level was only 0.16, which is typically not enough on its own to kill somebody. Additionally, Riley had a history of drinking, so he had likely built up some sort of a tolerance to alcohol.
Were you able to rule out cystic fibrosis?
Yes. Usually with cystic fibrosis, there is a clear presence of thick mucus that obstructs the airway. But in today's case, I found no such obstruction.
Were there any factors that you didn't rule out?
Yes. I could not rule out an oxycodone overdose. I read from the eyewitness statements that there had been a pill bottle found next to Riley. Since I suspected a drug overdose, I sent Riley's blood over to the lab to confirm this. I later received a copy of this laboratory report.
Would you recognize a copy of Exhibit 3, Riley's laboratory report, that was previously provided to you?
Yes, I would.
Dr. McDonald, could you please pull out Exhibit 3?
Yes, give me a minute, sir. Here it is.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is referencing Exhibit 3.
So noted.
Doctor, can you please tell us what Exhibit 3 is?
Yes, of course. This is a copy of Riley's laboratory report. Basically just states what drugs were in Riley's system at the time of the death.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of Riley's laboratory report in Exhibit 3?
Yeah.
Are there any insertions or deletions?
No, sir.
Do experts in your field typically rely on laboratory reports?
Of course. In today's case, I relied on the laboratory report to find out what was in Riley's system at the time of his death.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to enter Exhibit 3, Riley's laboratory report, into evidence.
You wish to move it into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
No objections? Admitted.
Doctor, what did you learn from Riley's laboratory report?
The laboratory report was one puzzle piece that revealed to me that Riley had ingested at least one pill of oxycodone. Now, this didn't definitively tell me that Riley had died of an oxycodone overdose, but instead it revealed to me that Riley had ingested some amount of oxycodone that night. I then went on to look for more signs of an oxycodone overdose.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. You can put down Exhibit 3. Did you notice any other signs of an opiate overdose while examining Riley's body?
Yes. Riley had experienced respiratory depression, which was consistent with the eyewitness statements. Additionally, Riley's brain wasn't getting enough oxygen, which caused him to fall into a coma. This all pointed to death by oxycodone.
Now I'd like to talk to you about your final conclusion regarding the manner of death. What did you use to come to your conclusion regarding the manner of Riley's death?
Well, as chief medical examiner, my job is not only to determine the cause of death, but also the manner of one's death. You know, whether it was a suicide, homicide, or anything else. In today's case, I relied upon the 911 transcript to determine whether someone was involved in providing the pills to Riley.
Would you recognize a copy of Exhibit 5, the 911 transcript that was previously provided to you?
Yes, I would.
Can you please take out Exhibit 5?
Of course, sir. I have it right here.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is now referencing Exhibit 5.
Noted.
Doctor, can you please explain what Exhibit 5 is?
Of course. This is a copy of the 911 transcript from the 911 call that was made on June 6th at 12:54 a.m.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of the 911 transcript?
Yeah.
Are there any insertions or deletions?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to enter Exhibit 5, the 911 transcript, into evidence.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's your objection?
Beyond the scope of witness's expertise, this witness is qualified as a medical expert to determine the cause of death, but not the mode of death. They should be allowed to make medical conclusions, not legal ones.
May I respond, Your Honor?
May.
Your Honor, Dr. McDonald is an expert in the field of forensic pathology, which includes what happened at the scene of the death. For example, if it was a suicide or not. In this case, Dr. McDonald is using the 911 transcripts to understand the events revolving around the night of the incident.
Overruled.
Dr. McDonald, what did you learn from the 911 transcript?
The 911 transcript revealed to me that Jordan made a call from his grandmother's basement the night of the incident. I followed the defendant's words and learned that Jordan stated Riley only knew the pills were there because of me. This was one puzzle piece that led me to believe that someone may have been involved in providing the pills to Riley.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. You can put Exhibit 5 down.
Of course, sir.
Dr. McDonald, in your professional opinion, what were you able to conclude to be the cause of Riley's death?
Following the defendant's words and reviewing all of the evidence, the puzzle was complete. Riley's death was by an oxycodone overdose, and the manner of his death was consistent in one in which someone provides him the pills.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, can't hear you.
Cross-examination, Your Honor. Permission to proceed.
Cross.
Good afternoon, Dr. McDonald.
Good afternoon.
Now, Dr. McDonald, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your testimony here today in court. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Now, you've been chief medical examiner for over 13 years now, isn't that right?
That's correct, yes.
And in that time, you must have examined thousands of bodies, isn't that right?
Yeah, yes.
However, in that time, you've only examined 2 or 3 bodies with cystic fibrosis. Is that correct?
Yeah, I haven't examined a whole ton.
Very well. Now, you mentioned that you consider different factors in your conclusion for Riley Russell. Is that right?
Yeah, I considered alcohol poisoning as well as cystic fibrosis and oxycodone overdose.
And you mentioned that you ruled out alcohol poisoning as a possible cause of death, correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
You mentioned that Riley Russell probably had some sort of tolerance to alcohol, in fact. Is that right?
That's correct.
However, you don't have any biological evidence of this tolerance, do you?
No, I don't. But from witness statements, I was able to see that there was something.
So this tolerance was simply an inference based off of the witness statements?
Correct, ma'am. But even so, without a tolerance, 0.16 is still a considerably low blood alcohol concentration level. Wouldn't kill somebody.
All right then. But however, there's other factors that did point to alcohol poisoning, isn't that right?
Correct.
You noted that Riley vomited, which is a typical sign of alcohol poisoning.
Yes, but vomiting can be a sign of a lot of things.
So that's a yes to my question then?
Yes, that's a yes.
Very well. Now, from what you do know about cystic fibrosis, you are aware that cystic fibrosis can cause respiratory depression, correct?
Correct, it can.
And Riley Russell's death was in part caused by respiratory depression?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Couldn't really hear you.
And you are aware that Riley Russell's death was in part caused by respiratory depression?
Yes, but this respiratory depression can also be caused by an opiate overdose.
Now, you mentioned that your ultimate conclusion was that oxycodone hydrochloride alone was what killed Riley Russell. Is that right?
I concluded that oxycodone aided in the death of Riley Russell, yes.
So it is your testimony today that oxycodone hydrochloride aided in Riley Russell's death?
Well, I mean, aided in his death. Yes, that's a yes to your question. It alone caused his death.
Thank you. Now, you even believe that 40 milligrams of oxycodone hydrochloride would have been way too much for someone of Riley's age and stature, right?
That's correct.
And when oxycodone hydrochloride is introduced to patients, it's introduced in dosages of 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams. Isn't that right?
Usually, because you have to build up some sort of a tolerance to it, especially when you're younger.
But those are the introductory dosages, yes?
Yeah, about.
And you are also aware, with the reports that you reviewed in order to form your conclusions here today, that Riley Russell was an adult. Is that right?
Yes, he was legally an adult, but his body has still been developing. He was very young still.
Back to my question, Riley Russell was above the age of 18 then?
Correct, yes.
Now, you just testified during direct examination that you reviewed Riley Russell's toxicology report in order to come to your ultimate conclusion. Is that right?
That's correct, ma'am.
And since you reviewed it in order to come to your conclusions, you must be aware then that the value of oxycodone hydrochloride found in Riley Russell's system was 0.491 milligrams. Is that right?
That's correct, ma'am.
So it is your testimony today in court that now less than half a milligram of oxycodone hydrochloride caused the death of Riley Russell?
I believe it was 49 milligrams, so that's what it said in the laboratory report, then yes.
I'm sorry, so it is now your testimony that 49 milligrams of oxycodone hydrochloride?
No, I meant, I'm sorry, ma'am, I misspoke. But yes, that's my testimony.
Let me clarify. So it is your testimony today in court that 0.491 milligrams of oxycodone hydrochloride are the sole cause of death for Riley Russell?
Correct, ma'am.
And when coming to this conclusion, you relied on all the resources that the state provided you, is that right?
That's correct.
At no point were you able to visit the scene of Riley Russell's death?
No.
You were not able to interview any witnesses when coming to your conclusion?
That's correct, ma'am.
You were not able to test the vomit or any other substances?
No, I was not.
The only substance that you were able to send for testing was a blood sample, isn't that right?
That's correct, but I was able to rely on eyewitness statements as well as one from the paramedic on scene.
Now, these were statements that you did not take, is that right?
That's correct, ma'am.
Thank you. Now, the blood sample, you were not the one who took it, is that right?
That's correct.
So the only investigation you were able to personally conduct for Riley Russell was the autopsy?
Correct. Everything else, I relied on the case material that was provided to me.
And you completed this autopsy only 14 hours after Riley Russell's death, isn't that right?
That's correct.
And even then, when you did review it, in your own words, the presence of cystic fibrosis was, quote, remarkable?
Well, yes. Riley is a cystic fibrosis patient, so there would be a presence of cystic fibrosis.
That's a yes to my question, that its presence in Riley's autopsy was remarkable?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Okay. Now, any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. May the witness be excused?
May be excused. Thank you. Do you have any further witnesses, State?
No, Your Honor. At this time, the prosecution rests its case.
Thank you. Defense, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we begin, I would like to introduce, well, not, before we begin our case in chief, I would like to point out stipulation 7. The DNA on the cigarettes were matched to Riley Russell on the scene of the crime. Stipulation 20 also says statements by a person who is found unavailable are admissible and an exception to the hearsay rule. And also stipulation 24 that Riley was pronounced dead at 2:52 a.m.
Stipulated.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we begin our case in chief?
May.
May I please call to the stand Dr. Alex McDonald or Dr. Taylor Smith?
Please raise your hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Dr. Smith, what is your name?
Good evening, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Hello, my name is Dr. Taylor Smith.
What is your profession?
I practice medicine as a pulmonologist. I am in the field of the treatment of respiratory illnesses and diseases. I am a specialist in cystic fibrosis, and soon I will have hit 35 years since I first began working.
What is your experience in the field of medicine?
I have a BA and my MD from the University of Chicago. Once I graduated from there, I attended Johns Hopkins University, where I completed my postgraduate and my residency. From there, I went on to work as a physician treating patients with cystic fibrosis for 8 years. Currently, I'm a tenured professor at the University of Chicago, teaching and lecturing in cystic fibrosis and pulmonary disease.
What, if any, credentials do you have in this field?
I'm board certified in internal medicine and in pulmonary disease.
What is your experience with people that have cystic fibrosis?
During my 8 years working, treating patients, I have treated well over 1,000 patients inflicted with this disease. Earlier in life, my younger brother also suffered from this disease, and it really allowed me to connect with my patients on a much deeper level.
Your Honor, at this time, we ask the court qualify Dr. Taylor Smith as an expert witness in pulmonology and cystic fibrosis.
Hearing no objection, so noted. You may
Thank you.
proceed.
What, if any, documents were available to you during your investigation?
I was allowed to review all of the witnesses' affidavits, along with all the exhibits that were related to this case. I was able to extract data from all of these documents to form my ultimate medical conclusions in today's case.
Dr. Smith, what are the effects that cystic fibrosis has on the body?
Well, I'm sure if anybody has been outside in the last couple of weeks, you'll have noticed that you've gotten runny noses. The thing that comes out of your nose is called mucus. Now that mucus is typically very fine and flows very easily. Now, when you add cystic fibrosis into the mix, it targets your mucus's genetic structure, changing it from that very fine liquid to a very rough, solid state, almost like having a bunch of jello inside of your lungs.
When was Riley Russell diagnosed with cystic fibrosis?
Riley was diagnosed at about 7 years old.
And how long do people with cystic fibrosis typically live for?
I've seen patients live up to be about 45 to 50 years old, but I cannot stress how important it is that for a patient to live their longest life possible, they absolutely must stick to their daily treatment plans to the letter and not engage in negligent behavior such as drinking and smoking.
What was Riley's condition like before his death?
Riley was recovering from a case of bronchiectasis. For those that don't know, bronchiectasis is a rare disease that causes scarring to both your lungs and your windpipe.
What, if any, effect would this have on Riley's lung function?
Well, Riley already had a very poor overall lung function with scars covering about 60% of his lungs. The introduction of the bronchiectasis did him no favors. It made it just that much harder for him to breathe and do daily exercise.
What caused Riley Russell to make the choking noises that his friends had reported that night?
Well, it was just that. Riley Russell was lying on his back and had vomited. The vomit had nowhere else to go, so he ended up choking on it. After he died, any remaining air that was inside of his lungs was attempting to escape through his throat.
Were there any drugs in Riley's systems?
Yes, the toxicology report I reviewed from the medical examiner's office hinted that there was oxycodone hydrochloride inside Riley Russell's system.
And if I showed this report to you today, would you be able to recognize it?
Yes, I would.
Now, doctor, can you pull up Exhibit 3 or People's Evidence 1?
I have it right here in my hand.
Let the record reflect that Dr. Taylor Smith is referring to People's Exhibit 1. What does this report tell you?
Well, as you can I don't know how well you could see this, but the very first line shows that there is.
Objection, Your Honor.
Speak up so I can hear you.
Never mind.
I can't hear you.
Objection, Your Honor. Violation of stipulation 14. May I be heard?
You may.
Stipulation 14 states that the contents of Exhibit 3 may not be used as substantive evidence.
Your Honor, if I may, the prosecution had also used Exhibit 3 as substantive evidence as well.
I'm going to overrule it.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
What does this report tell you, Doctor?
Well, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but on the very first line of this report, it is shown that oxycodone hydrochloride was found in Riley Russell's system. The amount of that being 0.491 milligrams.
And what, if any, conclusions were you able to form based off this report?
This report, I was able to conclude that the amount of oxycodone hydrochloride was not enough to kill Riley Russell. It is such a trace amount that I'm even surprised it showed up on this report.
In your expert medical opinion, how often in any way did smoking and drinking cause the death of Riley Russell?
Riley Russell both drank and smoked heavily that night. The combination of the alcohol, along with the smoke that he inhaled, paired with his already failing system, ultimately overloaded it and caused it to fail, thus killing Riley Russell.
And in your expert medical opinion, how often in any way did oxycodone cause the death of Riley Russell?
Objection, Your Honor. Improper expert opinion. May I be heard?
You may.
Dr. Taylor Smith has not been established an expert in any field that studies the effects of oxycodone or opiate drugs and overdoses.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Dr. Taylor Smith was able to review all this same evidence as Dr. McDonald. This is just forming his conclusion and separating the two factors.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Dr. Smith has reviewed all affidavits and evidence in today's case. That's correct. But he cannot come to a conclusion when it comes to overdoses or opiate drugs because he has not been established as an expert in that field of study.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may. Defense.
Dr. Taylor Smith is just testifying to whether or not oxycodone had effects on Riley Russell's cystic fibrosis.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
Now, Dr.
Stricken.
Dr. Taylor Smith, what was your final conclusion based on Riley Russell's death?
Well, my overall conclusion in this case was that oxycodone did not cause the death of Riley Russell. Rather, it was the alcohol that he consumed paired with the amount of smoke that he smoked from cigarettes that evening that crippled his system, causing it to fail and ultimately kill him.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay. Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Smith. Could you please pull out Exhibit 3?
Of course, counselor. I have it right here in front of me.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is referencing Exhibit 3, the laboratory report, which has previously been entered into evidence.
Is that a question to the doctor?
Your Honor, let the record reflect that he is referencing Exhibit 3.
Okay.
Doctor, Exhibit 3 is a laboratory report of what was found in Riley Russell after he had died, true?
Yes, this is the toxicology report.
And you had concluded smoking was a cause of death, correct?
That is correct.
But you did not conclude oxycodone was a cause of death, correct?
Oxycodone did not cause Riley Russell's death, no.
Now let's take a look at the table in the middle of Exhibit 3. The second row shows that there was oxycodone in Riley Russell's system, correct?
That is correct.
But what this report does not show is any traces of smoking cigarettes, true?
That's right, but even then, it wouldn't show up either way.
So no scientific report shows traces of smoking in Riley Russell's system, correct?
This was
Objection,
not.
Your Honor. Per stated in stipulation 7, agreed upon by both parties here in today's matter, the DNA and the cigarettes were matched to Riley Russell's system, and this is beyond the scope of Dr. Taylor Smith's expertise.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Not asking Dr. Smith if there was any DNA or anything with the cigarette butts found around Riley Russell at the time of his death. And I'm asking if there are any scientific reports that show traces of smoking in Riley Russell's system after he had died.
I'll withdraw the objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, continue.
There is no scientific report that shows traces of smoking in Riley Russell's system, correct?
This report shows what was inside of a vial of Riley Russell's blood. The smoke would not have made it into Riley Russell's blood, which is why it is currently not present on this toxicology report.
Dr. Smith, I'm not asking you about what's present on this toxicology report. I'm asking you that there is no scientific report at all that shows traces of smoking in Riley Russell's system, correct?
None that I have reviewed.
Thank you, doctor. You can put Exhibit 3 down now. Now, let's talk about some assumptions you made when coming to your conclusion. You believe Riley should have been more careful with his health, correct?
He most definitely should have.
You believe he should have engaged in exercise training, true?
Yes, that's the standard treatment plan. Failure to do so would only decrease his lifespan.
And you believe he should have followed nutritional guidelines, correct?
That was part of his treatment plan, yes.
You believe he should have engaged in pulmonary therapy, true?
Yes, that literally would have saved his life.
But you do not know whether or not Riley was following these recommendations in 2020, correct?
Not in those 3 months, no.
And that's because you only reviewed medical care reports from 2019, true?
Yes, the medical report was a little bit older than I would have liked, but it still gave me proper insight as to Riley Russell's condition.
Just to clarify, you only reviewed medical care reports from the year 2019, true?
Yes,
And you never examined Riley Russell in 2020, correct?
I never had the opportunity to know.
So Riley Russell could have been following these recommendations in the year 2020, true?
Yes, that's always a possibility.
Now let's talk about oxycodone being a potential cause of death. Riley had 40 milligrams of oxycodone in his system, correct?
No.
Okay. The safe dose of oxycodone varies from person to person, true?
Not necessarily. A starter dose for somebody who does not have a tolerance is 10 milligrams. Then we slowly increase it to 15, then followed by 20. Then once a person has a built-up tolerance, then we make that massive jump from 20 to 40 milligrams.
So the safe dose varies from person to person, correct?
Yes, it's about 10 to 20.
And 40 milligrams of oxycodone is a safe dose for someone who's taken oxycodone before, true?
Yes, only a seasoned veteran of the drug should take that much.
Riley Russell was never prescribed oxycodone, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
And 40 milligrams of oxycodone is also a high dose for a full-grown adult, true?
That is right, if that adult had never taken the drug before.
And Riley was not a full-grown adult, was he?
No, he was about 18 to 19 years old, which I would classify as an adolescent.
So he was only a teenager, true?
He was in that transition period of going from teenager to adult, yes.
And he was also severely underweight, correct?
Yeah, he definitely could have eaten a bit more.
And Riley was a non-user, true?
To what are you referring to?
To oxycodone or opiate drugs.
To my knowledge, that is correct.
So the oxycodone in Riley Russell's system would have had a higher effect on him, true?
If the full 40 milligrams were absorbed, of which they were not.
Dr. Smith, I'm not asking you about if he absorbed the 40 milligrams of oxycodone. I'm asking that the amount of oxycodone would have had a higher effect on him because he was only a teenager, true?
Yeah, there was always that possibility.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Dr. Smith. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
You may step down. Do you have any other witnesses, defense?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the defense would like to call Jordan Markson to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but?
I do.
Okay. Please state your name.
Hello, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Jordan Markson.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Please tell the court a little bit about yourself.
I'm 18 years old and currently a high school senior. I was recently admitted to Clearwater State and even got a small scholarship to the school.
How well do you know Riley Russell?
We started in the same math class and immediately hit it off senior year. He always knew the best ways to make me laugh, and we hung out pretty regularly. I think he's even been to my grandma's before.
What, if anything, happened on Friday, June 5th?
Blake and I talked a bit.
Your Honor, I believe that her sound cut off.
It is.
Jordan, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. My apologies, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I repeat the question?
Please do.
What, if anything, happened on Friday, June 5th?
Blake and I talked a bit in gym class about hanging out later that night. I asked Blake if he'd want to come over to my grandmother's place, and he was excited to come over for the first time.
What, if anything, happened during lunch that day?
I was talking to Riley and just simply mentioned my plans with Blake. Then Riley asked if he could join.
What, if anything, did you all do after school?
So me, Riley, and Blake all headed over to Blake's house to get beer from his brother.
Jordan, why would you go over to your grandmother's house?
I would regularly get into fights with my parents or just watch them fight. So my grandma let me have a safe place to escape to and was completely understanding. So I stayed there pretty often.
What did you do when you arrived at your grandmother's house?
We went to the basement and spent the entire night there. We ate pizza, drank, talked, and played video games. We were having a great time. Once we got down there, I didn't leave for the rest of the night.
Did anything else happen that night?
Yeah, at some point while we were talking, Riley asked me whether or not my grandma had anything fun in the house.
How did you respond to Riley's question?
I asked Riley what he meant, and to my surprise, he said pills.
What happened after?
I did tell Riley that there were some pills somewhere in the house, but that was it. I didn't give him a specific location or anything else. So we just forgot about it and continued hanging out the rest of the night.
And then?
I eventually passed out sometime after Blake did.
What, if anything, did you wake up to?
I woke up to Riley choking and barely breathing, and he wouldn't wake up. I was so scared. All I wanted to do was help my friend and make sure that he was going to be okay.
How, if in any way, did you react?
I went up to Riley to try and help. By his pillow, I saw my grandma's prescription pills. I have no idea how he got it, but the only thing.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation pursuant to Rule 701.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
The witness is just testifying to her observations and her experiences that night. She is not speculating anything.
I'm going to sustain that. Ask another way.
Yes, Your Honor, may I continue?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do then?
I went up to Riley to try and help. By his pillow, I saw my grandmother's pills, but the only thing that I needed to do at that moment was call 911 as soon as possible. And it felt like it took the paramedics forever.
And then what happened?
The police came shortly after the EMTs, and they proceeded to question me and Blake, each of us separately.
What did you tell the police?
I told them that we were at my grandma's house because I went there to avoid fights with my family. We were there that night to hang out and just play video games.
Anything else?
I knew that my grandma took prescription pills, but
Your Honor, I believe her sound cut off once again.
It is. I'm going to see what I can do. I asked her to unmute.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Am I back?
You're back.
Okay.
May I repeat the question, Your Honor?
Please do.
And then?
I knew that my grandma took prescription pills, but I don't know where she kept them. I let them know absolutely everything, being totally open and honest as I possibly could.
Jordan, did Riley ever mention his illness to you?
Riley never really talked about it. I figured that maybe Riley just didn't want to think about it. My mom did tell me it was supposed to be pretty bad though, so I just never pressured him into doing anything ever.
Jordan, what, if anything, did you do to prevent Riley's death?
I did everything that I possibly could to help Riley that night and keep my friend safe, only to watch Riley take his last breaths.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Good evening, Miss Markson. I'd like to talk to you about the night of June 5th, 2020. On June 5th, 2020, you invited some classmates over to your house, your grandmother's house. Isn't that true?
I first invited Blake, and then Riley just wanted to tag along, but yeah.
Riley Russell was one of those classmates. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he was in my math class senior year.
You think Riley had only been to your grandmother's house one time before that, isn't that true?
Yeah, he's been there before.
But you spent a lot of time at your grandmother's house, didn't you?
Pretty often so that I could avoid fights.
So you knew that your grandmother took prescription pills, isn't that true?
I would see her take them with her meals, yes.
And you told Riley that your grandmother had prescription pills in the house, isn't that right?
Somewhere, yes.
Now, let's talk about what happened after you told Riley about the pills. After you told Riley about the pills, you don't know if he left the basement, correct?
I know I never left the basement that night, no.
You don't know if Riley left the basement.
Yeah, since I was asleep, so I had no real control over what Riley was doing.
So you don't know if he went and looked for the pills, do you?
No, since I was asleep.
And when you woke up, Riley was lying unconscious on the floor, correct?
Yes.
So you rushed over to him, didn't you?
I wanted to help my friend as soon as I possibly could, yes.
And your grandmother's prescription pill bottle was lying right there next to Riley on the floor.
It was, but that wasn't my main concern at the time. My main concern was Riley.
Well, let's talk about what happened after you saw your grandmother's prescription pill bottle next to Riley. Once you saw that pill bottle next to Riley, you knew that you needed to call 911, correct?
As soon as I possibly could, yes.
Miss Markson, please pull out Exhibit 5, the 911 call.
It is pulled up.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the witness is referencing Exhibit 5.
Noted.
You are caller 1 in this transcript, aren't you?
It does say Jordan, yes.
In the 4th line, you stated there was an accident, right?
It does state on the transcript that there was an accident, yes.
In the 2nd to last line, you stated Riley took my grandma's pills, correct?
It says that on the transcript, yes.
You also stated Riley only knew they were there because of me. Isn't that true?
It says that on the transcript, yes.
Thank you, Miss Markson. You can put Exhibit 5 away now.
Okay.
So you feel like this is all your fault, correct?
I mean, we were at my grandma's house, so obviously in some way I'm going to feel like it could have been my fault, yes.
You feel guilty because you told Riley that your grandma had pills in the house. Isn't that right?
I just feel some sort of responsibility, especially since I tried to do everything that I possibly could. But again, I had no control over what Riley was going to do.
So that's a yes to my question. You do feel guilty that you told Riley that your grandmother had pills in the house, right?
I wouldn't really say guilty, but definitely in some way feeling some sort of responsibility, yeah.
So redirecting you back to my question, you were feeling guilty.
Your Honor,
Are we still on?
yes, Your Honor, objection.
My
Ba-
apologies, I cut out, Your Honor.
I can't hear you.
Objection.
Basis?
This question has been asked and answered multiple times.
State?
Your Honor, the witness wasn't giving a clear response. She was saying that she felt responsible, but she wasn't saying whether or not she felt guilty.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
The witness is testifying to the best of her ability, and she did say, I wouldn't say guilty, and then she went on to explain why. So she has answered this question.
She has not answered the question. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that she has answered it.
Okay. I'm going to overrule it.
Very well, Your Honor.
So Ms. Markson, you feel guilty because you told Riley that your grandmother had pills in the house. Is it that right?
If you're going to use the word guilty, I'd say no, but definitely some sort of responsibility, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I redirect?
You may.
Jordan, what did you tell Riley?
I roughly mentioned that there were some pills somewhere in the house just because I'd see my grandma take them with meals. And also, if anything, she probably could have taken them with her on her trip, but I just said that they were somewhere in the house. That's it.
Did you know where these pills were?
No, I never knew where specifically she kept them since she only brought them out at dinner time.
And did you know what they were?
I knew that they were prescription pills, but I didn't know exactly what kind.
And Jordan, what did you mean by Riley only knew they were there because of me?
Well, it was my grandma's house, and he was unconscious in my grandma's basement. So I was obviously going to feel some sort of way about that. But again, I was asleep and there's nothing much that I could have done from there.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Do you have any more witnesses, defense?
No, Your Honor. The defense rests.
Yes, okay. Closing?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I proceed, I ask that the jury members be allowed to pull out Exhibit 5 during the closing.
Yes, they may.
May I reserve any remaining time for rebuttal?
Do they allow you to do rebuttal in this?
Yes, Your
Yeah,
Honor.
fine, sure,
May I proceed, Your Honor?
you may.
Follow the defendant's words. Riley only knew they were there because of me. Now you might be asking yourself, what is the defendant talking about? The defendant is talking about his grandmother's oxycodone. See, the defendant knew where his grandmother's pills were, meaning he was in possession of them. And the defendant told Riley where they were, meaning that he delivered them. The result? Riley Russell died of an oxycodone overdose. We carried the burden of proof in today's case, and we have proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Jordan Markson unlawfully possessed her grandmother's oxycodone pills, told Riley about them, who ingested them, and died. Now allow me to walk you through the legal issues in today's case. Today we proved 2 counts. The first count we proved was constructive possession. Constructive possession occurred because the defendant knew where the drugs were and told Riley about them. We proved that the defendant knew where the drugs were through paramedic Peters. Paramedic Peters testified in court today that after following the defendant's words, she found a stash above the microwave cabinet in the exact location the defendant mentioned they would be. The second count we proved was drug-induced homicide. Now, we didn't need to prove motive, but what we did prove were 3 elements for this charge. The first element we proved was delivery. This delivery doesn't have to be physical. Just by telling someone where the drugs were was enough. Now, the defendant claims that she never told Riley where the drugs were. But let's look at all the evidence that proves otherwise. First, let's follow the defendant's words. You heard Ms. Peters testify in court today that the defendant said, "I never should have given Riley the pills." Members of the jury, some word speaks for themselves. Second, let's follow the defendant's words. And in the second to last line of Exhibit 5, the 911 transcript, Jordan stated, "Riley only knew they were there because of me." It was these words that led Dr. McDonald to conclude that the drugs were delivered to Riley, that they were delivered to Riley by none other than Jordan himself. The second element we proved was that Riley ingested the drug oxycodone. Dr. McDonald testified how she discovered that there was oxycodone in Riley's system. And the third element we proved was that the oxycodone in Riley's system caused his death. You heard from Dr. McDonald today in court that all the evidence points to oxycodone being the cause of death, not alcohol poisoning or cystic fibrosis. The defense called a few witnesses of their own, but can you really trust what they have to say? First, let's follow the defendant's words. The defendant herself admitted on stand today that it was because of her that Riley knew where her grandmother's pills were, because she was the one that told Riley about the drugs. The defense experts in today's case admitted that the oxycodone would have had a stronger effect on Riley because of her age and frame. What happened on June 5th, 2020 was the result of decisions where the defendant directly caused the tragic death of Riley. The evidence clearly demonstrates the defendant's guilt. The defendant's own words, "I never should have given Riley the pills," along with all of the evidence, proves that Jordan possessed and delivered the drugs that killed Riley. Follow the defendant's words, and you will find Jordan Markson guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Your Honor, once again, my name is Samantha Servin. May I
Mhm.
proceed?
Go ahead.
On the night of June 5th, Riley Russell was on a mission to score drugs. Jordan had no control over the tragic event that occurred that night. The prosecution would like you to believe that one small pill was the cause of Riley Russell's death. And they somehow think that my client had something to do with it. However, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the case. The truth is that Riley Russell was the one in control of his actions that night, smoking and drinking until his fragile lungs could not take it anymore. It was Riley Russell's decision that night that caused his unfortunate death, not Jordan Markson. On June 5th, 2020, all Jordan wanted to do was hang out with her friend Blake Stevens, but Mr. Russell decided to invite himself. Russell made decisions that night, decisions that are directly responsible for his death. Jordan had scholarships and plans after high school. Members of the jury, Jordan did only good things with what she could control. She, however, could not control Riley Russell's actions. Riley Russell had cystic fibrosis. Knowing this, Mr. Russell drank and smoked and made the unfortunate decision to take oxycodone hydrochloride that night. This was a decision that cost Riley Russell his life, not Jordan. The prosecution held the burden of proof, meaning they had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jordan is guilty of drug-induced homicide and unlawful possession of a controlled substance. This means that they had to prove that Jordan delivered the oxycodone to Riley, that Riley ingested this, and that the Riley Russell's death was caused by this ingestion. Today, you heard from the EMT. You heard that she took time to stop for a cup of coffee after receiving a 911 call, while Mr. Russell's life was hanging in the balance. Miss Peters took it upon herself to discover a stash, which she admitted wasn't part of her job description. On cross-examination of Dr. McDonald stated that he concluded that less than half a milligram of oxycodone hydrochloride was the cause of Riley Russell's death. His conclusions were based on an autopsy that was done 14 hours after the time of Riley Russell's death. His testimony was based on inferences and assumptions. We then called an expert in cystic fibrosis, Dr. Taylor Smith. He stated that it was not the oxycodone that caused Riley Russell's death, but rather he testified that it was Riley Russell's already declining health in combination with his risky behavior. That was the cause of Riley Russell's ultimate death. Lastly, we followed the defendant's words. Jordan Markson's words. She testified that Russell had asked her about pills. She stated she didn't know where the pills were or what the pills were, and that she didn't have any control over them. Jordan did not control Riley's smoking habit. She did not control his drinking. Jordan Markson is not responsible for the death for Riley's actions. Jordan Markson was asleep in the basement during the time that she is being accused of giving Riley the pills. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you must ask yourselves, how could Jordan Markson deliver the oxycodone if she didn't even know where it was? Members of the jury, with the facts and evidence presented to you, we are confident that the prosecution did not meet their burden of proof. Jordan Markson did not cause the death of Riley Russell. We ask you, the jury, to find the defendant, Jordan Markson, not guilty of drug-induced homicide and delivering the oxycodone. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any rebuttal? Is that part of this? Are you allowed to do rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any rebuttal? State.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
The defense was trying to tell you today that Riley had a mission to score drugs. But in reality, after following the defendant's words, we know that that is simply not the case. It was because of Jordan that Riley knew where the drugs were. The defendant herself admitted today that it was because of her that Riley knew that the pills were in the home. That night, Jordan committed a crime. Follow the defendant's words, you will find that she possessed and delivered the drugs that caused the death of Riley Russell. Follow the defendant's words, and you will find Jordan Markson guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense?
Your Honor, we do not have a rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Take a deep breath. Good job. Good job. I think I want to turn it over to the attorneys to comment. One thing I will tell you, I've been told that there have been technical difficulties in the other rooms. And they've had some power outages and so on. So we are very delayed. So once we conclude here, you may go to your next stop, but I don't know when that's going to start. So I just give you a heads up because I don't know. Okay. All right. Kelly, you want to talk?
I thought everything went so smoothly. I couldn't believe it. You guys have obviously practiced doing the whole Zoom trial thing. You probably have it down to an art more than most attorneys do. One thing I really liked, I think it was the state that did this, but as you were introducing people, everyone's cameras were off, and as they were being introduced, their camera turned on. So I thought that was a really good way to sort of introduce people and put the focus on the person you were introducing. You all did a really good job. I've done the scoring for the last like 6 or 7 years. And I have to say, both teams did such a good job. I don't see a really clear winner, which is great. Everyone was confident. Nobody tripped over their feet because you couldn't, because, it's Zoom, you're not walking around the courtroom, but you were all really confident. And it's okay if you do mess up. I mean, most of the time I am in court, I mess up. So props to you guys for being so poised. So just a few really good performances I wanted to point out. I thought the closing arguments were really good. I thought you guys were very different, but you both did a really nice job. Is it Mr. Afzal? Am I pronouncing it right? I hope so, I'm guessing.
Yes, Your Honor.
You were incredibly poised. You enunciate very well. You're easy to follow. And it's Ms. Servin?
Yeah.
Close? Okay. You did a really nice job too. I thought you really got your point across. You had a good level of emotion. So both of you, like I said, really different approaches, but you both did a really good job. I thought all the witnesses did a really nice job. Sometimes in past years, witnesses sort of fall flat, but I thought you guys were you knew your facts. When you were asked questions, you gave answers that made sense. I actually thought, Mr. Vankov, I thought you did a really nice job. At the beginning, I thought you were a little bit stiff, but then I was like, well, he's a doctor. Sometimes that's just how they come across. And your explanation of what cystic fibrosis is, cleared up 34 years of confusion. I thought you explained medical concepts in a way that just made sense. I was really impressed. I think I have one. Miss Salman, you did the cross for the state's witnesses for 1 and 2, right?
Yes, I did.
You did a killer job. You did a very nice job. So when Avery was testifying, when just in the direct examination, I was like, oh my God, I really believe her. I think she's like, you know, this great paramedic, and her testimony was great. But when you came in with the cross, I'm like, oh, you know, maybe she overstepped her role as a paramedic. So you did a really good job of dealing with very good witnesses and sort of poking holes in their credibility and making me think about things that I wouldn't have otherwise thought about. So, and also you got yes and no answers out of your witnesses, which is really hard on cross. So I thought you did an excellent job.
Thank you. Tracy?
Hi, great job, all of you. I come from kind of a unique perspective on this. So I was a state's attorney in Rolling Meadows for a number of years, and I actually prosecuted a case that involved kind of similar facts. So I was thinking through that and watching how you guys were handling it. Then I became a defense attorney. Now I practice family law, which has nothing to do with this case. But I'm also have the unique perspective of having a teenage son who is doing high school on Zoom, like you guys. So I give you guys credit for even being on camera. I can't even get him to turn his camera on in class. So you get A+ from me just for doing that. That alone is bonus points. You have to tell me your secrets because I can't make him do it for anything. Just to highlight a couple of things that Kelly said, I echo exactly what she said. Honestly, when I just did your scores, you guys are like within 1 or 2 points of each other. I thought you were both absolutely excellent. Great job. And way to roll with the punches with us being on Zoom and not in person. That is very difficult. You know, you're talking to a camera. You're used to standing up and talking to each other. So great job and great teamwork too, because it is a team effort here. So I appreciate all of your efforts. Dr. Yokohana, I liked you. I believed you. You were reminding me of some doctors that I know. So I thought you did a great job portraying a doctor. And I agree with Kelly, Miss Salman, you did a wonderful job. Honestly, I hope you consider a career in law. I think you're excellent. So great job to all of you. Good luck with the rest of the tournament or the rest of tonight. And then I know you hope to move on to further tournaments. So great job, everybody.
Yeah, from my
Yeah, everybody. My name's Ed Hartman. I think you all did a wonderful job. The most important thing for any attorney to do, and you all did it very well, was to know your case and know the facts. You've obviously done a lot of preparation to know these cases, and hats off to the witnesses because you really have to know everything about what that fact pattern gave you because you don't know where the questions are going to come from. I'm a former defense attorney in the Navy JAG, so hats off to any of the defense counsel and counsel that were doing cross-examinations because it is, I believe, a lot tougher, as Ms. Peterson said, to get your witness to answer with one-word questions instead of having them go all over the place. I especially like Dr. Smith, I think that was Mr. Van Koff. He just came across as an expert. You know, I say this jokingly, a smug expert, which you want, which was very good. But I think you all did a great job, and you probably have more experience doing Zoom trials than most of us do now. We're just getting into it. A lot of cases are getting pushed to the right because people don't want to do Zoom trials. So I'm learning a lot from this, and I'm taking what I'm learning from you. So congratulations, you all. Best of luck on your next trials and ventures, and just hats off to all of you. Did a wonderful job.
Thank you. I think that's it for the judging attorneys, correct? Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm Zoom court every day of my life now, and it's a challenge to be able to do it. So hats off to all of you. I think you did a spectacular job. I really do. I liked the closing and the opening from both sides. I think you both did a great job. I like the way you tied the words together. Mr. Azul, is that it? Azul?
Afzal, Your Honor.
Azal, sorry. And to Ms. Salman, great job. Just, yeah, very hard to do exactly what you did. So good job. I will give everybody this information. this is high school. You can try this stuff out. You need to object more. You need to do it more. Because there were times I thought, why aren't they objecting? Why aren't they, so you need to take the risk and do it, because this is your opportunity to try it. You can't do it if it doesn't apply, but you're going to try. I tried to make my ruling so I didn't look like I was favoring anybody, not necessarily doing exactly what it was, but I wanted to see what would happen, and you handled it really, really well. So great job, really, really impressive. And yeah, I'm going to mirror what some of the lawyers said. You do a better job than lots of other lawyers out there. So good job. I don't know when we're going to do the next start of this. I don't know how that's going to happen yet because of the delays technologically. So I can't know that, but I guess we can conclude here. I'm not sure how the scoring will happen now, but the lawyers are going to be scoring if they haven't already. Have you started scoring?
Yeah, I'm done. This was actually great. It was nice to be able to do it sort of instantaneously.
Yeah, I'm done and I sent it in already, and there was no math, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, I like that too, Tracy.
No math in this one, which is a nice break for us.
All right. Well, I think that's it for me. So thank you and good luck on your next round.
Thanks, guys. Good job.
Oh. Silence myself.